Welcome to Institutional Correction. I will be your lecturer, William de la Cruz. Penology, otherwise known as penal science. So, penology is a science that deals, take note, it deals with the study of punishment for crimes or criminal offenders. It is also includes the study of control and prevention of crime through, take note, through punishment of criminal offender. So this is the classical doctrine influence. Penology is actually a division of criminology. It is just a division of criminology that deals with prison management and the treatment of offenders and concerned itself with the philosophy and practice of society in its effort to repress criminal activities. So this penology is part or a little part or some part or a division of the study of criminology, and it includes or it focuses or its concern is under the treatment of offender in the prison management as well as the study of the punishment for the offender. So penology derives from two words, pino and logy. Okay, the term pino was derived from Greek word poine as well as from Latin poena. Both term means punishments. So, ang pagkakaiba lang from Greek and Latin but the same meaning or terms, and it says that it is a punishment. So, logy, lagi nating naririnig, it was derived from the Latin word logos, that means science. Logy, logos, science. So, correction. Correction is the branch of the criminal, or it is the branch of administration of criminal justice, or the CJS, criminal justice system, charged with the responsibility for the custody, supervision, reformation, and rehabilitation of convicted offender. This is the positivist doctrine influence. Okay, going back to the classical doctrine influence, punishment or crime is to punishment. That is the classical doctrine of influence. While the positivist doctrine of doctrine influence, it is crime, and the criminal. Okay? On the classical, crime and punishment. On the positivist, it is the crime and criminal. In the classical, criminal is a rational being that know how and what they are doing. In the positivist doctrine influence, criminal is just a sick person. So that is the difference of positivist doctrine influence and the classical doctrine influence. So this one is focusing on the rehabilitation of the convicted offender. Two forms of correctional treatment of the offender. First, we have institutional treatment or the institutional correction. Second, you have your community-based treatment or the non-institutional treatment. We will be focusing on the first part of this, which is the institutional treatment or known as the institutional correction. Ano bang pagkakaiba nito? To give you an overview, institutional correction or as well as known as institutional treatment is the convicted criminal or the convicted person will go under rehabilitation under bars. Ibig sabihin nun, nakakulong siya sa isang pasilidad. While the community-based treatment or non-institutional treatment is he is serving his sentence or his or her punishment on the community with supervision of a certain person. That is the difference of institutional treatment and community-based treatment. So going back to the historical perspective in correction. On 13th century, securing sanctuary. Okay, in the 13th century, a criminal could avoid punishment by claiming refuge in a church for a period of 40 days. So parang ang basis nito is the 40 days na naglakad or nagfasting naglakad wala hindi kumain at nag roam around si Jesus on 40 with a range of 40 days. So, kailangan mo din daw gawin yon for you to be able to claim refuge in the church at mapatawad ka. That is the 13th century securing sanctuary. Okay, England. In England, you have your 1468. It is a torture as a form of punishment because became prevalent. Okay, in England in 1468, a torture as a form of punishment became prevalent. So maraming types of torture, iba-iba. 16th century, transportation of criminals in England was authorized. At the end of this century, Russia and other European countries followed this system. This practice was abandoned in 1835. So malalaman nyo kung paano nila tinatransport yung criminal later on. This is in the 18th century. So tumagal siya hanggang 1835. So that is decades. Now, in the 17th to 18th century, death penalty became prevalent as a form of punishment. Going back on your introduction to criminology, on the 17th to 18th century is still under the classical school of thoughts. In the 18th century, you are now on the Enlightenment period under Cesar Lombroso, which is the Enlightenment period. So in the 17th to 18th century, still death penalty became prevalent as a form of punishment. Tapos nung nag-18th century above na, it is the year of Enlightenment. So hindi na. So galleys, this is a long, low, narrow, single-deck ship propelled by sails, usually rowed by criminals. This is a type of ship used for transportation of criminals in the 16th century. Okay, going back on the 16th century, we have galleys. These galleys are long, narrow ship or long, narrow, single-deck ship propelled by sails, usually rowed by criminal. Yung criminal ang nagpapadel nung galleys, nung balsa, ang galleys, natawag natin doon is galleys. And then they will transport themselves into a certain area kung saan inassign. That is galleys. That is transportation in the 16th century. In the 16th century. So, okay, the age of enlightenment. This is 18th century. It is a century of change. It is the period of recognizing human dignity. Why? In the 18th century, 17th to 18th century hanggang pababa, death penalty is prevalent. Why? Kasi it is crimes and criminals. Okay? Crimes and punishment. Okay? Crimes and punishment. When it is crimes and punishment, we are under classical school of thoughts. What is the perspective or ano yung pag-iisip ng classical school of thought? That a person commit a crime because he is a rational being, he go under pleasure and pain principle, he go under utilitarianism principle, he go under philosophic calculus principle. That's para isuma total lang ang sinasabi nun that a person can think whether or not he is doing right or wrong, and he is just calculating if he will benefit from it or not. That is the classical school of thought. While on the 18th century, on the age of enlightenment under Cesar Lombroso, we says that criminal is a sick person and they are not rational being that can think that they are doing the right thing, but they are the sick person. May mali sa kanila, kaya ginagawa nila yon. Kaya kailangan silang gamutin, hindi patayin. That is 18th century. Recognizing human dignity. And thanks to Cesar Lombroso for introducing this one. That's why he is the founding or the father of the modern criminology. So it is the movement of the Reformation, the period of introducing of certain reforms in the correction field by certain person, gradually changing the old positive philosophy of punishment to a more humane treatment of prisoners with innovation programs. Okay, the pioneers. We have number 1, we have William Penn. He is the first leader to prescribe imprisonment as correctional treatment for major offenders. Okay, he is also responsible for the abolition of death penalty and torture as a form of punishment. So, thanks to William Penn. Next, Charles Montesquieu. Okay? Charles Louis second that Baron de la Brede et de Montesquieu. Montesquieu pala. Ayan, Montesquieu. In 1689 to 1755. This is a French historian and philosopher who analyzed law as an expression of justice. Okay, it is an expression of justice, yung batas daw. Okay, he believed that harsh punishment would weaken morality. Pinapababa daw nung moralidad ng mga tao yung harsh punishment. Okay, hindi daw humanly yon. Hindi humanly nature yung pag harsh punishment. That's why we should think how to punish those person. Next, we have Voltaire. Okay, François Marie Arouet. Yan, Voltaire, or known as Voltaire. Okay, he believes that fears of shames was a deterrent of crime. He wrote that legality sanctioned practice of torture. Okay? Sabi niya dito, naniniwala daw siya na ang pananakot or fear of shame was yung fear of shame was a deterrent to crime. Okay? He wrote that legality sanctioned practice of torture. Number 4, Cesar Beccaria. Okay? The full name of Cesar Beccaria is Cesar Bonisana Marquis de Beccaria. He wrote an essay entitled An Essay on Crimes and Punishment. Okay, in Crimes and Punishment. This book became famous as the theoretical basis for the great reforms in the field of criminal law. Okay, the book also provided a starting point for the classical school of criminal law and criminology. Yan. He was the primary advocator of the doctrine of free will. Alam nyo na yan. And regarded as the father of criminology. Okay? This is Cesar Beccaria. Now, it presented the humanistic goal of law. Father of criminology, old criminology, Cesar Beccaria. Father of modern criminology, that is Cesar Lombroso. Jeremy Bentham. Okay, Jeremy Bentham, the greatest leader in the reform of English criminal law. So, dagdag nyo yan. He is the greatest leader in the reform of criminal law. Okay? So, magkakasama to si Cesar Beccaria, si Jeremy Bentham, and Rafael Garofalo. Okay, the Holy Three or the Italian Tree. Okay? He believes that whether punishment designed to negative whatever pleasure or gain the criminal derives from crime. Okay? The crime rate would go down. Okay? The proponent of the hedonism theory. Okay? O, isa-isayin natin. The greatest leader in the reform of English criminal law. He is one of the reformists with regards to the English criminal law. And English criminal law is adopted in the Philippine criminal law. Okay? He believes that whatever punishment designed to negative whatever pleasure or gain the criminal derives from crime. The crime rate would go down. Okay? So, the proponent of hedonism theory. Ano ba yung hedonism theory? It is said that your hedonism theory is the calculation of pain and pleasure principle. That a person will commit a crime if he knows that the pleasure that he can get is greater than the punishment that it costs. Pain and pleasure principle. Next, Jeremy Bentham. He introduced also the ultimate panopticon prison, or the device that he devised the ultimate panopticon prison. Panopticon prison is a prison that consists of a large circular building, okay, containing multi-cells around the periphery, but it was never built. Okay, it was never built. It's just a ultimate proposal as well. But it is a prison that consists of a large circle. Pa-circle siya. Okay, the building contained multiple cells around the peripheral, but it was never built. Also known as the inspection house. At nasa gitna yung guard nun. Okay, pabilog siya na malaki, tapos sa gitna nun open, at nandun yung guard. At nakikita nung guard lahat ng pwedeng lahat ng nakakulong doon. That is the panopticon prison, but it was never built. Okay. John Howard. We have your greatest prison reformer. Why? The Sheriff of Bedfordshire in 1773 who devoted his life and fortune to prison reform. He is the father of prison reform. It is John Howard. He is also known as the greatest prison reformer. Why? Kasi dito. After his findings on English prison, he recommended the following. Okay? Number 1, single cells for sleeping. Nakita niya kasi na siksikan yung mga criminal offender during his time. And then, nakita niya na sama-sama yung women. That's why he now suggests that the segregation of women from men in a penal facility. Next, segregation of young or the youth. So, sama-sama kasi during those time ang matanda, bata, babae at lalaki. So, ngayon, sinegregate niya yung tatlo. And then, next, we have your provision of sanitation facilities. Ang dumi-dumi kasi ng mga correctional facilities during those time. And then, he also advocate the provision of sanitation in the facilities. Next is the abolition of the fee system by which jailers obtain money from prisoners. Okay? So, yan. That is John Howard. He is the greatest prison reformer. Thanks to him. That's why we have a good and pleasant correctional facility. At least nowadays. John Howard. We have Benjamin Rush. Okay? He voiced two concerns. Okay? What? Number 1, punishment should not be public event. And 2, reformation of offender could be achieved through punishment that encourage. Okay, the reformatory movement. Ito na. The reformatory movement featured indeterminate sentencing. Okay, indeterminate sentencing. We have also parole. We have also classification by degree of individual reform. We have your rehabilitative programs and separate treatment for juveniles. The philosophy of this period was founded on the NPA, National Prison Association Declaration of Principles, the view that crime was a moral disease and the belief that criminal were victim of social disorder. Okay, syempre nga positivist influence, di ba? Now, we have Enoch Cobb Wines conducted a national prison survey and organized the NPA. He is the one who organized the National Prison Association. Okay? And then NPA is now known as the American Correctional Association. The American Correctional Association is the largest corrections association in the world, founded in 1870 as the National Prison Association. This organization of prison professional had a prison reform orientation. Okay? I want you to take note, Alexander Maconochie. He is the superintendent of the penal colony at Norfolk Island in Australia during 1840, who introduced the mark system, okay, that became the blueprint of modern day parole. Before I go further, what is this mark system or the modern day parole? This parole is what we given to those person or offender or criminal offender serving their sentence inside the prison na mas mapapaaga natin silang mapalabas dahil they behave good and they behave bounded by the rules and regulation of the institution. That's why they are given deduction of sentence, and that is the modern day parole. What is the founding father of the modern day parole, or what is the founding, okay, of the modern day parole? That is the mark system. Who introduced the mark system? He is Alexander Maconochie. Who is Alexander Maconochie? He is the superintendent of the penal colony at Norfolk Island in Australia during the year 1840. Okay? And now, he is considered as the father of modern penology because of his mark system. Okay, furthermore, a mark system, a progressive, humane system in which a prisoner is required to earn a number of marks. Bakit kasi tinawag na marks? Kasi you are required to earn a number of marks based on proper department labor, and study in order to entitle him for a ticket for leave, okay, or conditional release, which is similar to the parole. That is Marx system. Now, we have Manuel Montesinos, the director of the prison in Valencia, Spain, in the year 1835, who divided the number of prisoners into companies, okay, and appointed certain prisoners as petty officers. Gumawa siya ng sarili niyang batalyon, okay? Officers in charge. He allowed reduction of service due to good behavior. Okay, parang pattern to ng Marx system or parang pattern to ng parole, pero ang ginagawa dito, ang basis dito ni Manuel Montesinos is a good behavior, and then he will give in return as a good conduct and time allowance. Yun. We have of Domets of France established an agricultural colony for delinquent boys in 1839, providing house fathers as in charge of these boys. He concentrated on re-education. Okay? Upon their discharge, the boys were placed under the supervision of a guardian. Okay? Yung delinquent child or boys only, not for girls. Okay? For boys, delinquent boys will be put into a ang modern day niyan or ang modern Domets of France natin ay ang mga boys town. Okay? And then they will put on the boys town. They will be rehabilitated on that, providing there is a house father which is in charge for these boys, and then upon concentrated or they will be given education, and then upon their discharge, they will be placed under the supervision of a guardian. Okay. Next is Sir Evelyn Ragas Bryce. Okay, this is the director of English prison who opened the Borstal Institution for Young Offender. What is the Borstal Institution? It is considered as the best reform institution for young offenders today. That is the Borstal Institution. This is the first, okay, take note, this is the first institution for young offenders. Babae at lalaki. Borstal Institution, considered as the best reform institution for young offenders. Next, Walter Crofton. He is the director of the Irish prison in 1854, who introduced the Irish system. I want you to take note what is the Irish system that was modified from Maconochie's Marx system. Anong pagkakaiba ng Irish system at Marx system? It is almost the same as with Maconochie Marx system. Okay? Parehas lang din that they will be given a mark, and then after given a mark or they mark with following the rules and regulation of the penal facility, they will be given good conduct and time allowance. Ang proponent lang kasi magkaiba. Si Walter Crofton, he called it Irish system. Yan. While Alexander Maconochie called it Marx system. That is Walter Crofton. Okay. Zebulon Brockway, first superintendent of Elmira Reformatory in New York. He introduced training school type, education for prisoners, solitary confinement for night, and congregate workshop were adopted extension, use of parole, and indeterminate sentence. I will further explain what is the difference between solitary confinement and congregate workshop or congregate confinement. Okay? So, solitary and congregate, that is different. So, Zebulon Brockway is the first superintendent of Elmira Reformatory in New York. His supervision is combination of a solitary confinement, which applicable for night, and a congregate workshop, which applicable for day. Okay? You will know later on what is the solitary confinement and congregate. But I want you to take note that Zebulon Brockway, which is the superintendent of Elmira Reformatory, use both or the combination of these two. Paggabi at pag-umaga, magkaiba. Okay? Meron kasing ibang prison na gumagamit lang ng pure solitary, day and night. Meron ding pure congregate, day and night. Pero kasi, si Zebulon Brockway, he used the two and divided into the 24 hours schedule of the criminal offender. Elmira Reformatory in New York. Okay? 1876 in Elmira, New York, the first reformatory and considered as the forerunner of modern penology. That is Elmira Reformatory. We have Jean-Jacques Philippe Villain, founded the Maison de Force. Okay, the Maison de Force. In Ghent, Belgium, he introduced, number 1, felons and misdemeanors should be separate. And B, women and child must have separate quarters. Parang parehas sila ni, ni Howard. Okay? But magkakaibang lugar. Okay? Magkakaibang lugar. Early codes. Babylonian and Sumerian codes. Okay? The founding of all codes. Code of King Hammurabi. Hammurabi Code is a Babylon credited as the oldest code prescribing savage punishment, but in fact, Sumerian codes were nearly 100 years older. Medyo wala pang on the Sumerian codes were nearly 100 years older, still lacking of facts and evidences, but still we credited to Code of King Hammurabi. It is an oculo dente pro dente, which means an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That is Code of King Hammurabi. Okay, King Hammurabi. Roman and Greek codes. We have Justinian Code. On the 6th century AD, an effort to match a desirable amount of punishment to all possible crimes. However, the law did not survive due to the fall of the Roman Empire. Justinian Code. Okay? Justinian Code, 6th century AD, Emperor, the advocator of this is the Emperor Justinian of Rome, wrote his Code of Law, foundation of Western legal codes. That is Justinian codes. We have the 12 tables. Okay, the 12 tabulae represented the earliest codification of Roman law incorporated into the Justinian Code. 12 tables. Okay, it is the foundation of all public and private of the human and of the Romans until the time of Justinian. It is also a collection of legal principles engraved on metal tablets and set up on the forum. That is the 12 tables. Now, Greek Code of Draco. Okay, Greece. This is the harsh code. This is more than harsh than Code of Hammurabi that provides the same punishment for both citizens. Ayun nga, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And slaves, as it incorporates primitive concept. Hence, the Greek were the first to allow any citizen to prosecute the offender in the name of the injured party. Okay. And most commonly, the punishment under Greek Code of Draco is death. Next, the Virginian Code. Okay, it's specific or specified punishment according to the social class offenders. Okay, dividing them into nobles, middle class, and lower class, and specifying the value of life of each person according to social status. Ibig sabihin, laging tatandaan dito, the Burgundian Code, that if you are a rich person, therefore your punishment is lighter than those who are on the lower classes in living, or those slave. Pag slave siguro, matik, putol-putol kamay, mga ganyan na, maiming and mutilation agad. Pero pagka mga higher classes, siguro mga mga magagaan na punishment, magbawalis lang, parang ganun. Okay, that's Burgundian Code. It was value of the life of each person according to social status. And according to social status. Now, we go to early codes in the Philippine settings. Mostly tribal tradition, customs and practice. Influenced law during the pre-Spanish Philippines. There were also laws that were written, which includes, you have your Code of Kalanchao, the most extensive and severe law that prescribe harsh punishment. This code contains 18 articles, you know that, only but enough to maintain peace and harmony. This code was decreed by Dato Kalanchao. That's why it is called Code of Kalanchao. About 100 years before the coming of the Spanish colonization, or the pre-Spanish Philippines. And then you have your code, or the Maragtas Code. And we go to early development of prison. So, historical perspective of correction. Ayan nga, tapos na tayo dyan on the 13th century, securing sanctuary. Okay? It's giving a refuge to the church for 40 days para mapatawad ka. On the 16th century, is the transportation of criminals in England was authorized by the use of galleys, okay? Na pinapadal ng mga criminals itself. We have your gaols, okay? These gaols or jails, gaols, jails, the description given to pre-trial detention facility operated by English sheriff in England during the 18th century. Okay? Galleys, ayan. A little review, long narrow single deck ship propelled by sails usually rowed criminals. Ano naman yung hulks or the hulks? These are former warship used to house prisoner in the 18th and 19th century. These were abandoned warship converted into prison as means of relieving congestion of prisons. Okay? It is known as floating hells. Floating hells. Bakit? Pag nalagay ka dyan, bahala na kayo dyan. It is hulks. Ordeal. In the church, substitute for a trial under the 13th century wherein guilt or innocent was derived by the ability of the accused of being uncatched through dangerous and painful tests. That is ordeal. Parang you are under influence or protection of a divine intervention. That's why you will be safe if you are accused or if you are suspected to do certain acts. Then God will or divine intervention will intervene for you to be saved. But if not, you will be punished or you will undergo ordeal, and then you will receive whatever may be the cause of the trial. And it will determine that you are a criminal. That is ordeal or the trial by ordeal. We have many types of trial by ordeal. Trial by lion, trial by spitting, trial by fire, trial by hot iron, trial by hot iron bars, and many more. We have your Charlemagne, okay? Carolus Magnus gave bishop the power to act as a real judge, which enabled bishop tribunal to rule on secular matters. Okay, King of Franks and Roman Emperor Charlemagne. We go to Mamertine Prison. Mamertine Prison is the only early Roman place of confinement which is built under the main sewer of Roman in the 64 BC. That is Mamertine Prison. We have St. Bridget's Well or the Bridewell Workhouse. England first house of correction. This is used for locking up. Okay? Employing the weeping beggars or prostitutes and night walkers. The most popular workhouse in London which was built for the employment and housing of English prisoners. So, nilalagay dyan yung mga beggars, nilalagay dyan yung mga prostitutes, as well as night walkers. We have Walnut Street Jail. Constructed in 1776, originally constructed as a detention jail in Philadelphia. It was converted into a state prison and became the first American penitentiary. Take note, Walnut Street Jail is the first American penitentiary. Closed down in 1835, largely due to politics, crowding, and lack of financial resources. Ganun naman commonly kaya naglo-close sila nun. Crowding, politics, and lack of financial resources. Yun yung pinaka-main three reason. Crowding, politics, and lack of financial resources. Now, next, we have your Hospicio de San Michel. Okay, or the Hospicio de San Michael on the other definition. But here, it is Hospicio de San Michel. Or Michael. San Michael. The first home for delinquent boys ever established. Okay, built by Pope Clement the 11th in Rome for housing incorrigible youth under 20 years of age. Next, Old Newgate Prison, an abandoned copper mine located at Simsbury, Connecticut. Inmates are confined underground and was considered as a black hole of horrors. 'Di ba? Yung Connecticut, maraming binibury na tao doon. Ito yun, which really belongs to the barbaric past. Today, this is a museum that belongs to the state of Connecticut. Old Newgate Prison. Okay, binabaon sila. Sa ilalim, doon sila kinukulong. Wala nang kainan, wala nang labasan. Hanggang mamatay na sila doon. Old Newgate Prison. That is the entrance to hell. Entrance to hell. Yan. Tandaan ko yan. That is the entrance to hell. Next, we have your Newgate Prison of New York. A maximum security prison of New York State Department of Correctional Services in the town of Ossining, New York. Sing Sing was the third prison built by New York State. The first prison was built in 1797 in Greenwich Village, and the second one is the 1816 called Auburn Prison System, or the Auburn State Prison. Okay? What is Sing Sing Correctional Facility? Sing Sing Prison. Okay, Sing Sing Bat Prison. Ayan, Sing Sing Bat. Famous because of its Sing Sing Bat. What is Sing Sing Bat? The shower bath was a gadget who constructed as to drop a volume of water on the head of a naked offender. Nakahubad. And then to force of the icy cold water hitting the head of the offender caused so much pain and extreme shock that prisoner immediately sank into coma due to the shock and hypothermia of sudden drop in the body temperature. That is Sing Sing Bat inside the Sing Sing prison. Okay, or the Sing Sing Correctional Facility. Sing Sing was derived from the Indian word Sint Sink or Sint Sinks, which translate to stone upon stone. Now, we have your Alcatraz prison. Kung familiar kayo on the great prison escape, this is Alcatraz prison. Open in 1934, closed on March 1963. Okay? For it was costly on operation. When it closed, it has 260 inmates only. Now a tourist destination in New York. Okay? Going back to Alcatraz prison. Alcatraz prison is known as the Rock. Why? If you go to a geographical area of the Alcatraz prison, my dear student, you will see that it has a perimeter, or it has an it likes an island on a sea. Okay, ang paligid niya ay puro tubig na. That's why it is impossible that an inmate or a criminal offender will escape this Alcatraz prison. Okay? That's why the great prison escape is still under investigation. That if a person or the four person really do successfully escape Alcatraz prison, it is called the Rock. Okay? And going back to Alcatraz prison, these 260 inmates, even though ang sarap ng buhay nitong mga to, they even eat steaks during Christmas. Okay? They have food nutritionists in 1934. Okay, in 1934 onwards, these 216 inmates was given full funded. That's why it was being closed on March 16, for it was costly on operation. Imagine they even ate steaks during Christmas or during some events. Ganun ang Alcatraz prison. And still, it has also another history that is the greatest prison escape. Alcatraz prison. It is the Rock. Now it is a tourist destination in New York. Fred T. Wilkins, the last warden of the Alcatraz prison in 1963. He is the last. While director of the Federal Bureau of Prison who wrote about the closing of Alcatraz prison is James Bennett. James Bennett. He is the director of the Federal Bureau of Prison. Australia, the place which was a penal colony before it became a country. Okay. Australia is a penal colony before it became a country. Take note of that, Australia. Convicted criminals in England were transported to Australia. A colony of Great Britain, when transported, was dropped into a colony of Great Britain. When transportation was adopted in 1970, to 1875. So, dyan nila nilalagay sa Australia. So, from Australia, siguro ang mga tao doon is kumbaga, going back to the criminology, the tree of the mother of all criminal, adage, okay? So, on the Australia, siguro marami ring criminal dun, no? Not saying so, but during those times. Pero ngayon, hindi na, of course, because it was already a country na. But formerly, it was a penal colony. Okay, you have two rival prison. Okay, two rival prison system in the history of correction. This is what I am telling you, the congregate and solitary confinement before. Okay, this is the combination of yung binigay ni Makonochi. The New York Auburn Prison System. Okay, the New York Auburn Prison System is constructed. This is the New York or the Auburn Prison System. Okay? This is constructed in 1816 as Auburn Prison. It was the second state prison in New York, the site of the first execution via electric chair in 1890. What is this Auburn Prison System? This is the congregate system, okay? Known as the congregate system or the silent system. Why? Because inmates were prohibited from talking or even looking at one another. Bawal silang magsalita, bawal silang mag-usap, bawal sila even magtinginan. Okay? Elam Lins, warden at the Auburn, established a congregate system in which inmates eat and work together during the day. Still congregate, experiencing isolation only at night. While you have your Pennsylvania prison system, this is the solitary system. While prisoners are convicted in single cell day and night, where they live, slept, ate, and receive religious instruction, completely silent was also required. Prisoners are required to read Bible. This is the solitary system. Okay, solitary system. This is the Pennsylvania prison system. Anong pagkakaiba dito? New York, they are allowed to work, inmates eat and work together during the day while isolating during the night. On the Pennsylvania prison system, which is the known as solitary system, they are completely silent and they are completely living on their cell day and night. And they are required to read Bible. So, we have three primary school of penology. We have your classical school of criminology. Okay, states that man is essentially a moral creature which an absolute free will to choose between good and evil, and therefore more stress is placed upon the criminal himself. Proponent, Cesar Lombroso with Jeremy Bentham, because the main advocates of the classical school of criminology through their proposed utilitarian hedonism. The greatest happiness is the greatest number of people. Hedonism. Okay. The belief that people choose pleasure and avoid pain. That is Bentham. Utilitarian hedonism. The theory explains that person always acts in such a way as to seek pleasure and avoid pain. Let's go back. And then free will. A philosophy advocating punishment severe enough for people to choose to avoid criminal acts. Okay. Hedonism. Dito muna tayo sa free will. Okay, free will by Beccaria. Yung tao daw nag-iisip ng tama. Okay, he is a rational being. Okay, that's why he know if what he will commit is wrong or right. Free will. Next, we go to hedonism by Bentham or Jeremy Bentham. The belief that people choose pleasure and avoid pain. Gusto niyang laging sarap. Gusto niya, ayaw niyang nahihirapan. That is hedonism. Okay? Calculation of pain and pleasure. That is specific calculus, calculating the pain and pleasure principle. Utilitarian hedonism. This theory explains that a person always acts in such a way as to seek pleasure and avoid pain. There is a criminal and then you feel threatened. Okay? Ngayon, paano ba matatanggal yung feeling of threatened sa community? Yung criminal na nasa community. Ako, law-abiding citizen, while there is a criminal on the community, I feel not safe. What if the person or the criminal, we put it into lock-up jails or sa sa correctional facility. Do I feel secure? Yes, I will feel secure. That is the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. Ibig sabihin, pag tinanggal natin yung magiging masama or magiging hindi ka nais-nais sa isang lugar at magiging safe yung isang lugar, yun ang greatest happiness ng tao. That is the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. That is utilitarian hedonism. We have second, the neoclassical school of criminology, founded by social scientists who argued that there are situations that makes free will impossible to exercise. Okay? On what occasion? This one. A children and lunatic should be excused and not be regarded as criminal. And second, punishment must consider mitigating and aggravating circumstances if these two prevail. Okay? Pagbata, mitigating circumstances. Exempting circumstances, pag may baliw daw yung tao. Okay? Next, the positivist Italian school. Proponent, Cesar Lombroso, Enrico Ferri, and Rafael Garofalo. Okay? Ito pala yun. Holy Tree. I am correcting it. It is the Holy Tree of Criminology, or the Italian school, as known as the Positivist School of Thought, or known as Italian School of Thought. They are the Holy Tree. Ang magkakasama, Cesar Lombroso, Enrico Ferri, Rafael Garofalo. Okay? It is not Cesar Beccaria. It is Cesar Lombroso, Enrico Ferri, and Rafael Garofalo. The proponent or the person together with Cesar Beccaria is Jeremy Bentham. While the Holy Tree or the Italian Tree or the Holy Tree or the Positivist or the Italian School is Cesar Lombroso, Enrico Ferri, and Rafael Garofalo. Okay? The primary personalities again is Cesar Lombroso, Enrico Ferri, Rafael Garofalo. Note, they are known as the Holy Tree of Criminology. What is their study? That is the Positivist School of Thought, also known as Italian School. Okay, the Positivists maintain the crime as any other acts. It is natural phenomenon and it's comparable to disaster or calamity. Believe that imposition of punishment could be deter and treat crimes but rather rehabilitate, or the enforcement of individual measures. Okay, next. Imprisonment has a system of punishment. Punishment. Let's define punishment. Let's go to imprisonment. Ikukulong as a system of punishment tayo. Punishment, it is the redress. Okay, it is the redress that the state... What is redress? Redress, known also as, or other terminology, is the punishment that the state takes against an offending member of society that usually involves pain and suffering. That is the definition of punishment. Okay, Asian form of punishment, we have your death penalty. It is done by burning, hanging. This is Asian form of punishment. Death penalty, done by burning, hanging, beheading, breaking out the wheel, drowning, and other forms of medieval execution. First burning happens in England. Last burning happens in Berlin. Take note, first burning, England. Lagi naman, England. Last burning, Berlin. Okay. Physical torture or the corporal punishment. This is effective by mutilation, maiming, whipping, and other inhumane or barbaric form of inflicting pain. What is the difference between mutilation and maiming? Mutilation, tinatanggal yung body parts, which is body parts. Okay, pag tinanggal ka ng daliri, body parts. O pag tinanggalan ka ng something which is on your body parts not essential for work. While maiming, pag tinanggalan ka ng isang mata, yung essential sa pagtatrabaho, that's maiming. Next, social degradation. Okay, the purpose of this is to put the offender into shame or humiliation. Social degradation, pinapahiya. Banishment or exile. Okay, banishment or exile is the modern day destierro, which is the sending or putting away of the offender, which was carried out either by prohibition against coming into a specific territory, such as an island, to where the offender has been removed. Okay, other similar forms of punishment, likewise transportation and slavery. Okay, transportation, yung by the use of galleys. Contemporary forms of punishment, we have your imprisonment. Ito na yung bago ngayon, my dear student. Imprisonment, 6 to. Putting offender in prison for the purpose of protecting the public and at the same time rehabilitating them by requiring the latter to undergo institutional treatment program na na nakababagay para sa kanya. Legal grounds of detaining a person. We have commission of crime and violent insanity or any other ailment requiring compulsory confinement in hospital. Second, we have parole. It is the conditioned release of a prisoner after he has served a part of his sentence in prison under the guidance and supervision of a parole officer. Okay. For example, your sentence is a 10-year sentence. When you will get parole, when you serve a part of it. What is a part? It is a half of it. Okay? Kalahati nun. Ibig sabihin, you are now eligible to apply for parole. Pag na-serve mo yung kalahati nung sentence mo, parole. Okay? A part of it. Serve already a part of it. Hindi agad-agad makakuha ka ng parole. No. Okay? Probation. Pero pwede ka agad-agad makakuha ng pardon. Yan. Pero not parole. Okay? Probation. A disposition under which a defendant affect after conviction and part of his sentence in prison under the guidance and supervision of the parole officer. Probation to. A disposition under which a defendant after conviction and sentence is released. Papalabasin to. Okay, you will not serve inside correctional facility, but you will serve it outside. Okay? To the condition imposed by the court and under the supervision of a probation officer. Magre-report ka monthly commonly. Next, we have your fine and we have your disiero. Fine amount given as a compensation for criminal act. Okay? This is your disiero. Fine. This is a civil liability. Okay? Disiero, the penalty of the banishing a person from the place where he committed a crime, minimum of 25 kilometers radius, paikot. Okay, early forms of prison discipline. We have your hard labor, productive work, deprivation, monotony, uniformity, the fault of one is the fault of all, mass movement, mass eating, sabay-sabay kayong maligo, sabay-sabay kayong kain, uttering insulting words to the prisoners, sinong magano niyan, yung mga bantay, corporal punishment, employment of physical force to inmates, as well as the isolation and the solitary confinement or the lone wolf. Now, we have your justifications of punishment. We have, ito na yung bago, okay? The retribution. Retribution, expiation, or atonement, and dito tayo, retribution. Punishment of under justification of punishments. Retribution, punishment of the offender is carried out in the form of personal vengeance. Since retaliatory act result in the infliction of greater injury, give rise to an eye for an eye philosophy. So, gumawa ng crime, that's why you are eligible para parusahan. That is retribution, personal vengeance. Okay? Expiation or atonement. This was in the form of vengeance as a distinguished form from retribution, where punishment is exacted publicly for the purpose of appeasing the offender, public, or group. Punishing gives lesson to the offender by showing to the other what would happen to them if they violate a law. So this is a deterrent effect, okay, on the person and on the other person. Expiation or atonement. Next, types of deterrence. We have general deterrence and specific deterrence. What is general deterrence? Yung papanish ka kasi ginawa mo yun. Specific deterrence is papanish ka kasi ginawa mo yung isang act. General deterrence, baka ka pinanish pa to show example to other kung ano mangyayari sa kanila pag ginawa din nila yon. Incapacitation and protection. Punishment is effected to deprive an offender to the ability to commit crimes against society, usually by detaining the offender in prison, requiring convicts to undergo an intense program and rehabilitation in prison. Okay? Next, lastly, we have your reintegration. Okay, maintain the offender ties to family and the community as a method of reform. We are now reforming those criminal offender so that she is able to re-enter function in the community upon release. We are no longer calling them criminal offender, but we are now calling them person deprived of liberty. Okay? So, what is penalty? It is the suffering inflicted by the state. That is penalty. It is a suffering inflicted by the state against an offending members for the transgression of law. And that will end our first part.